Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back at 7:08, and we're going to go right to the phones. We have a special guest on the line. We have the executive director of the American Petroleum Institute in Colorado, Tracee Bentley. Good morning.
Good morning, Don. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure hearing from you. So we're going to talk a little bit today about last week's EPA decision, and they finally came to, at least, in my mind, something that most of us here in this part of the world have known for quite a while, that it looks like hydraulic fracking doesn't affect groundwater. And tell us a little bit about that decision.
Yeah, well, as you pointed out, I think the good news is that the ultimate authority, the EPA, did come to the conclusion that, by the way, we came to about 65 years ago, that hydraulic fracturing is in fact safe for our groundwater. On the other hand, it took millions of taxpayers' dollars for them to study this and come to the same conclusion. So.
Well, yeah, and of course that seems to be the way the EPA works. But do you think that this is a situation where they were kind of booked into a corner and they couldn't put this off any longer? They had to finally admit that these old myths about fracking damaging groundwater, they had to dispel them sooner or later, right?
I do. I think they have known this. Many of the current administration's top decision makers on this issue have known that hydraulic fracturing is in fact safe, and I think that the release of their study forced them to say it publicly.
Well, yeah. Now, again, I think people in our part of the country and other parts of the country where fracking is fairly common. I grew up in Pennsylvania. There's a good bit of fracking going on in Pennsylvania as well. But I think people in other parts of the country where they're not around this all the time still get this idea that fracking causes oil and chemicals in water. It causes earthquakes. That's the other one. I hear all the time, is that fracking causes earthquakes. What can we do as people that know the facts? What can we do to kind of combat that? I imagine that's probably pretty much what your job's all about.
It is, as you can imagine, as you point out. I spend a significant amount of time with voters in our neck of the woods, explaining to them it is safe, the benefits to having fracking in your community, all the money that goes to schools, for example, to our roads. That's all due to oil and natural gas production, and most people don't realize that. And I'm talking to people who say things like, I don't want that fracking rig near my child's school. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a fracking rig. And second of all, they've heard so many rumors and myths that they've been fed and believe it's true, that undoing those myths and those lies takes a lot of time, but it is time well spent.
Yeah, well, and not only that, you're starting to see kind of a line being drawn in the sand. You have some states that are outright banning fracking. I think New York and Maryland just recently did that. And then you have other states, I mean, Colorado and Wyoming and North Dakota, of course, that are doing as much fracking as possible. I guess how do you close that divide between those two very different worldviews?
Sure, I think for the most part, there are so many states. The vast majority of states would absolutely give anything to have the natural resources that Colorado and Wyoming do, because they see the benefit to our economy. In Colorado, and I know Wyoming's very close, we have over 213,000 jobs in our industry here, and oil and gas is 7% of our state employment. And when you don't have that in your state, you wonder, wow, what would it be like to have that? And so when I visit other states, my message is Colorado could lose this if we aren't careful about our overregulation.
Well, yeah, and Colorado, of course, is a bit politically different than Wyoming. I think that's an understatement to say that. But is that something that down there? Now, what part of Colorado are you in?
I'm actually in northern Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Just a little east of Fort Collins, so I'm fairly close to you.
Oh, okay. So even within your own state, I imagine you see a wide variety of opinions on this.
You are exactly right. It is all across the board. I will say, though, one of my favorite things about the partnership between Colorado and Wyoming are our two governors. Of course, the Colorado governor is a Democrat, and of course, Wyoming Governor Meade's a Republican, but they see eye to eye on this issue, and it makes it so much better going to Congress or going to the administration when you have two opposite party governors, both from the West, saying the same thing. It's very helpful.
Well, and even Montana tends to be on the right side of things. I'm pretty sure Montana still has a Democrat governor too. So it's certainly. I don't think it's a party line thing out here. I think it's more of people that have been here and know how the energy industry works, and maybe people that have transplanted from other parts of the country. They don't know how it works yet. But I think once people learn the facts, they're very accepting.
I could not agree with you more, and you are exactly right. At least what we found in Colorado is the folks really stirring up trouble and creating falsifying information are transplants, or they're not even transplants. They moved to Colorado specifically to get people fired up, and then they go back to California or wherever they happen to be from.
Oh, so you have a little bit of a problem with AstroTurf coming in from California, then?
I have a significant problem with that. Yes.
Well, I imagine we'll probably see it up here at some point, but unfortunately we can't keep them out of Wyoming forever. So, I mean, how do you deal with something like that? I mean, I imagine just getting the information out there is pretty much all you can do, right?
That is. It's all about education, and we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time here in the last year, and really it was the threat of the ballot measure that started our educational efforts, and we are behind. These efforts should have started long before we felt under attack to the extent that we did. But nonetheless, the past year we have spent time educating folks on what is fracking, and what does it mean for my community? Is it safe? How many jobs does my local community, how many of them are oil and gas? And so things like that, and it's working. Because now the public opinion has shifted significantly from this time last year, and it's due to our educational efforts.
Oh yeah, and I will say I've started to see that happening in some other states, even some states back east. We're starting to see a little bit of a pushback towards this. Now I want to go back to the EPA's decision. Now the EPA's decision basically said that hydraulic fracturing doesn't harm groundwater. Is this the last that we're going to hear of the EPA when it comes to fracking?
Well, I would be shocked if it is. I really hope it is. I think a lot of us do, but I would be shocked. I know they're feeling the pressure from the environmental community to constantly be scrutinizing the process and really just the industry in general. And when they go after a process and they can't find fault, that won't stop them. They'll keep searching for something that they can find a fault with.
Well, it certainly seems that way. I mean, we're, of course, up this way, we pretty much have to deal with the EPA on just about every issue we have, with coal and gas and coal bed methane, and then they start coming after. They start coming after the prairie chickens and everything else. So the EPA is a daily problem for us up here.
Yeah, well, we share your pain, certainly. And we actually, I think another thing that I love about Colorado and Wyoming is we share information and plans with each other. So if, for example, with regards to your prairie chicken and some other endangered species, Colorado looks closely at what Wyoming does as far as, conservation management plans and how do we keep these things from being listed. Usually they shouldn't be listed. It's not warranted, but I like the relationship there.
Yeah. It does seem, and it seems like the Western states have a pretty good system of working together on a lot of issues, not just the environmental and the energy industry issues, but sometimes there's some differences. But on most things, it seems like we get along pretty well. It's a good blueprint. I think, again, I grew up in the Northeast, so I was just back there for vacation a couple weeks ago. I could say the Northeast could definitely learn a little bit from how the West actually does things.
Well, I tell you what, I'm convinced this would be a somewhat of a more decided issue if that were the case. The West is unique in many ways, but it's due to our geology and our hydrology. We are the best people to make these decisions when it comes to process and developing oil and natural gas. Washington, D.C. and the Northeast have no idea what our states look like, and they should not be the decision makers on this.
Yeah. Now, have you found that once people from back east, especially the politicians, have you found that once they come out here and they visit a fracking site and they visit a coal mine, do you find that they start to kind of understand how this works if they just see it?
I have, and it's very, very helpful. The trick is getting them to actually come out here to spend the time.
That is true.
The couple of times I've seen it done, people are amazed, and they walk away saying, that is not at all what I had pictured.
Yeah, and it really, I think you're right. The trick is getting them to agree to come out and look. I mean, I like I said, I grew up back east. My grandfather was a coal miner. He worked in the West Virginia coal mines, which of course are underground. So that's what I always pictured a coal mine as. And the first time I saw a mine out here in Wyoming, it just amazed me. And then I was, I took a tour and they showed me all the reclamation efforts, and it's just amazing how the people that develop energy out here have so much respect for the environment. And I think just the trick is getting more people to see that. And your group is one of the ones that is helping do that.
We are, and you just said a key word for us, and that is reclamation. On one of the tours where we got some U.S. House of Representative energy staffers out, they absolutely could not believe. We went to an active site, and then we went to a site that had been that was done, closed up, and had reclamation on it, and they were just amazed at how you could not tell. There was no footprint. It looked natural. And I said, we've been doing this for so long. We know what we're doing. And usually we leave it better than when we found it in the first place. So that's always fun to show off what industry can do when we're done.
Yeah, and I think that's the key part, is just to show those reclamation efforts. So what do you think is going to be next after the EPA finally gave up a little bit on this groundwater? What do you think we're going to see next from them?
Well, I think it's not specifically EPA, but it is still the Obama administration. Of course, we're dealing with the BLM proposed fracking rules on public lands. And this is another perfect example of, listen, we don't need a new set of rules. We have been operating, industry has, under the safest standards for over 60 years. And by the way, we continue to regulate ourselves and institute our best practices. So why do we need more regulations just because it happens to be on public land? So I think that's another big fight that's coming up.
Well, yeah, and of course the public lands issue is a huge thing. I don't know how big it is in Colorado, but up here, with 48% of the state being public lands, at least federal public lands, I think it's another 10% for the state. That's a huge deal up here, and of course that's an ongoing battle. I think you're right about that, though. It seems like, and all you have to do is look at North Dakota, where it's almost all private land, and look at the development there compared to what Wyoming's been able to do, which is good, but it could be a lot better.
I couldn't agree more. When it comes to in Colorado, on our western half, on our west slope, we have a significant, I think, over 55 or 60% is federal lands over there. But it just goes to show that putting blanket rules down across a country that is so diverse, especially in geology and how we extract the resources, one size does not fit all. This has to be left to the states if it's going to be done properly.
Yeah, and all you have to do is just take a look at the each state's environmental regulations. In a lot of cases, they're more strict than the federal regulations, but they're done in a way that still allow for development.
That's exactly right, and I know Colorado certainly is a case like that, and I know Wyoming. I mean, you all are constantly looking at how to improve or add regs. And industry's been a partner in that. So you're exactly right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your group and what you're going to do to kind of fight the good fight on this upcoming BLM fight.
Sure, you bet. Well, we've got a couple of fights going on right now. We're taking the lead on the BLM fracking rules, as I said before, and we're pushing really hard to make the case. States are the entities to do this. They've proven that they're the entity. The federal government does not need to interfere on every front with regards to energy production. The next big issue, and this is huge for the country, but certainly the West, is the Obama administration's new proposed ozone regulation. It's pretty telling when places like Yellowstone and Rocky Mountain National Park, under the new proposed rules, will be considered non-attainment. That does not make sense. That is crazy. And this is going to cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars just to start complying with the proposed ozone rules when we're not even done with the 2008 rule implementation. So that is another one where we are pushing back very, very hard, saying this doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, those ozone rules, they've been a pretty hot topic up here, especially in this town. And we have several coal-fired plants within 10 miles of here, and I can tell you, I've seen these plants, I've seen how they run. They're spotless, but again, none of them, even though they're state-of-the-art technology, would be under compliance. I mean, it's just it's almost ludicrous when you think about it.
It really is, and it's one thing, but the 2008 rules have not even been fully implemented. So it makes no sense to institute brand new rules when the previous rules, just in 2008, by the way, not that long ago, we have not even had time to implement. So I think it's reckless, it's very irresponsible, not just for oil and gas, but as you pointed out, for coal and for business in general. It's going to hurt a lot of people and cost a lot of jobs.
Oh, well, it certainly would around here. I can tell you that for sure. So you're going to be keeping an eye on that as well. Why don't we only have a couple of minutes left before we have to wrap things up. Why don't you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. You can find us on api.org. There is a ton of information on there. It will tell you what's going on state by state and how you can get involved on any given issue at any time. You can certainly, you're happy to call me anytime, 970-412-3386. And my email is Bentley, BENTLEYT, @api.org.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk to us today. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again sometime soon. Maybe next time these BLM rules are in the news, we'll give you a call, okay?
I would love it. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much. That was Tracee Bentley, the executive director of the American Petroleum Institute in Colorado. API.org is their website. This is just an ongoing fight. I mean, there's good news last week from the EPA, but we got to remain vigilant. On that note, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. News Talk 1270, KIML.
Basin Radio News, Fox News, Cowboy State News.
More news than you can shake a stick at.
Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. 1270 KIML. 1270 KIML. 1270 KIML. 1270 KIML.